It's time for part 3, the final part of my 2K Q&A video series. Let's dive into your remaining questions. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life. I am back today with the final part of my 2K Q&A video series. This is part 3. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, I will have links to both of those videos in the description box below, so be sure to check them out. And it has been so much fun answering all of your questions. I did divide all of the questions into 6 different categories, and we are going to go through the remaining questions from each category today. As a reminder, the categories are early reading life questions, general reading questions, general book questions, genre and specific book questions, personal questions, and booktube related questions. But without further ado, the first category are early reading life questions. And the first question is, what was your favorite book as a child? As always, I have a really hard time narrowing my favorites down to just one. So I have a few. The first one is From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsberg. I absolutely adored this, the story of a brother and sister who run away to the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art and live in the museum. Loved it. Next up is Anastasia Krupnik by Lois Lowry. I love the Anastasia books. This is not my original copy. I got this one on Thrift Books not too long ago because I really want to reread Anastasia, and I love that at the end of each chapter, she has a list of things I love and things I hate. I just love lists. I love Anastasia. Such a fun book. And then, of course, I have to have Ballet Shoes by Noel Streatfeild on this list because I just love it. I loved it as a child, still love it as an adult. And then next up is another book. A lot of my books have girls' names in the title. I definitely had an affinity for a plucky, spunky female main character, and Caddy Woodlawn by Carol Ryrie Brink is no exception. I loved Caddy Woodlawn, though I haven't read this book since I was a kid, and I really need to reread it because I just adored this book and I loved Caddy so much. She was exactly the kind of little girl I wanted to be. And then next is Pippi Longstocking by Astrid Lindgren. What is there that can be said about Pippi? She is just a joy. I just adore Pippi. She's, like I said, she's the best. And then lastly, this was actually the last book that my mom read aloud to me. I have such fond memories of us reading this book together, and I think this is one of the first books that really made me very sad at the end of it, and that was Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Another book I really need to reread. It is a beautiful story about a horse, and I'm not a huge horse person, but I loved Black Beauty. The next question is there a book that was a favorite in childhood but didn't hold up as an adult? I would have to say that most of the books that I read as a child that I have then since reread as an adult are all books that I really loved as a child, and all of them have held up. There isn't a single one that I wouldn't recommend to another adult or a young child today. And then the next question is, what was your favorite middle grade book as a child, and what is your favorite middle grade book as an adult? I already shared my favorite middle grade books as a child, but the books that I read as an adult for the first time that are favorites, I have 3 of them, and in no particular order. I'll go in the order I read them. How about that? The first is The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. I love this little duology. The War That I Finally Won is the second book in this series, and I highly recommend it as well. I think it's just lovely to see the entire story played out, and I highly recommend this book. It is so lovely. I've read it twice now, and I am sure I will read it many more times in the future. It is absolutely lovely. Lovely. All about found family, which is a fantastic trope in middle grade books. And then the next book that is a favorite middle grade I read as an adult is Short by Holly Goldberg Sloan. And this is the story of a young girl who lives in Oregon, actually in Eugene, which is where I went to college at the University of Oregon. And she is taking part in a theatrical production of The Wizard of Oz during the summertime at the University of Oregon. And she's playing a munchkin. And there were so many parallels in this to my own life. Not that I was exactly the same as this young girl in this book, but I've been in The Wizard of Oz. I then choreographed The Wizard of Oz when I was in college at the University of Oregon. And I just felt like this book was written specifically for me, and it is so lovely. And it's all about this little girl finding her place, and you know, again, a little bit of found family, friendship, all of that, figuring out who she is and how she fits in and what's wonderful about herself. And I loved it. Highly recommend. And then the last book will come as no surprise. It is a recent read and a new favorite, and that is Heidi by Joanna Spyri. I know I've talked about this book on and on endlessly, but I'm going to continue to talk about it. I love it so much. Such a wonderful story. Love Heidi. Everyone should read this. And that is it for all of the early childhood questions. Let us move on, and I will answer the last few questions in the general reading category. The first question is, do you have a favorite online bookshop, or do you prefer to buy books at an actual brick and mortar store? I will always prefer to buy books at an actual brick and mortar store. Unfortunately, where I live in Northern California, rent prices make it such that bookstores, especially independent small bookstores, have a really hard time making it. And we just don't have a lot of brick and mortar stores near me. I have a couple of Barnes and Nobles. I have one independent bookstore that's nearer to where my mom lives, but I get to go there sometimes because it's near to her. And then we have the half price books. Again, I don't have a plethora of places to shop in store for books. And a lot of the bookstores just don't carry the books I'm looking for right now. So that makes it more of a challenge and means I do need to shop online. And some of my favorite online bookstores, definitely Thrift Books is my go-to for used books. I've had so much good luck with thrift books. I also love Book Outlet for really, really discounted remaindered books. And I have found some lovely gems through Book Outlet as well. And then I also recently discovered, I didn't discover this online bookstore, which is also a physical bookstore in the UK, and that is Blackwell's Books. And so it isn't something that's new to me, but I did just discover that they ship free to the US, or shipping's included in the prices of the books. So you don't have to pay shipping. So I can get books that are more easily found in the UK sent to me here in the US. And that just brings my heart so much joy. I love it. And yes, I have bought some Persephone books that way and a few other things, just titles that I find difficult to find here through US online booksellers or brick and mortar stores. And then lastly, you know, I have partnered with Tertulia.com, and they are a new online bookstore to me. They're only a few years old, so they are relatively new in the grand scheme of things, but I really like their whole co-op setup that they have going on. I'll have a link to them down below. They are quickly becoming a new favorite, and you can always use my code GENFANS to get 20% off your order at Tertulia.com. The next question is, what are some of your favorite sources for finding new book recommendations? Well, probably like many of you, I use both BookTube and Bookstagram to find probably the majority of my book recommendations these days. I do have a few specific people that I really enjoy getting recommendations from. I'm just going to go over the booktubers that I follow here that I really appreciate their recommendations and have found some wonderful gems from each of them. And they are Miranda Mills, of course. I know many of you follow her, but if you are not, you definitely should. She is so, so lovely. And then Gina Stanyer. Gina and I We cross over in a lot of the books that we read, though she does read other genres that I don't. But it's so fun. I love hearing her talk about books, and she always makes me excited to pick up things that I have on my shelf that I haven't read yet, but that she has read. She makes me want to pick them up right now and read them. And then Kate Howe. Kate was one of the main reasons why I started my channel. I loved her channel. She's on a little bit of a break right now, but if you haven't discovered Kate, go check out her channel. She has so many videos. You can just go back and watch them all, and she has such wonderful recommendations. Kate is a go-to for me. And then I really love Krista from Books and Jams when I'm looking for middle grade recommendations. In particular, she is one of the hosts of Middle Grade March, and I really just enjoy her channel, and her book vlogging weekends are really fun to watch too. So I enjoy those very much. Get lots of recommendations from her. There are so many more. I could go on and on and on, but those are some of the top booktube channels that come to mind. I also get recommendations from a couple of book podcasts that I listen to, and I have two particular ones that I really love. The first is Tea or Books, and Simon and Rachel on Tea or Books, they always they read two books and they compare them and review them and then pick which one they sort of preferred. And then in the beginning, they always talk about books that they're currently reading, and then they usually answer some kind of this or that book question, which is really fun. And then often they'll answer another bookish question. So I adore their podcast, and I have listened to every single episode. And I was really sad when I got all caught up because now I have to wait for new ones to come out. And then I also really love A Good Read on the BBC. That podcast in particular, the host has two guests on, and all three of them each recommend a book that is a good read, and all three of them read those three books and then they discuss them. I don't always want to read every book they talk about, but I love the way they talk about books. It just is an utter delight. And then lastly, the places that I get recommendations from are certainly family and friends. Definitely my mom, as I've mentioned in the past, but I have other bookish friends and family members, and I get recommendations from them as well, and personal recommendations are just the best, aren't they? Next question, and this question came from a couple of people actually, and it is, how do you organize your bookshelves? Alphabetical by author, or perhaps clumped together by genre? Unread versus read, or do they organically organize themselves as you finish books and pull other books to read? I wish they organically organize themselves. Actually, I don't wish they organically organize themselves, because I really do enjoy like moving my books around and organizing them in different ways and seeing what works best. But for the most part, my books are alphabetized alphabetically by author. I have them separated, so I have two bookshelves, one here and one across from me, that are all unread fiction. On the second bookshelf, the bottom of it is all of my nonfiction books, which I don't have separated by read and unread because I don't have a ton of nonfiction, or at least not nearly as much as I do fiction. So I just have them all grouped together, and they're all alphabetized by author. And then I have shelves of books that I have read, and those are all alphabetized by author. Though I have separated out most of my middle grade fiction, I have on some bookshelves outside of this room, and just because I don't have enough space for everything. And then I do have books scattered throughout the house. That I have another bookshelf downstairs that has some of my personal favorites, and books that are pretty to look at because that bookshelf is kind of out in a public space. So I have them organized in different ways, subject to change at any time. But like I said, I am going to be doing a tour of all the bookshelves in my house, and I will go over how they are organized or lack of organized when I do that tour. That is the last question in the general reading category. So we will move on to general book questions. The first question is, have you met any authors? And the answer to that is yes. I think I mentioned in my last video that I have met Susan Branch and her husband, and they are both just the loveliest people. The day I met them, it was so hot out, and the venue where the book signing was happening, the AC was not working and it was so hot, and she sat and signed books for a couple of hours. I mean, she was a trooper. I couldn't believe it. I would have been dying, but she was just so lovely. We were some of the last people to get autographs and pictures with her, and I'll put a picture of my mom and I with Susan Branch here, and she was just as lovely by the end of the line as she was at the beginning of the line, and it was a delight to meet her. I have also met Annie Barrows. She co-wrote the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society with her aunt, who passed away before she could finish it. So Annie Barrows finished the book for her aunt. And I met her, and she did a talk about the book and about her aunt and about finishing it for her. And it was very good. It was a long time ago, so I don't remember a ton about it, but she did sign my copy of the Guernsey book, and I should have brought that up here to show you all, but I didn't. So next time. Those are the only authors that I have met to my knowledge. And then the next couple of questions are about like book to movie adaptations. The first question is, what are some love-hate book and movie or TV show combos you've experienced? One that comes to mind is The Princess Bride. We read it for the Cozy Reader Book Club earlier this year, and all of us that read it did not like it nearly as much as we all love the movie. I would say if you love the movie, there's no need to read the book, because the best parts of the book are in the movie. This next book to movie love-hate relationship is very recent. My mom and I just watched this last week when I was staying with her, and that is Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. I read the book years ago. I really enjoyed it, and then we saw that there was a fairly recent, this is a new version with Jessica Findlay Brown. She was Sybil on Downton Abbey, if you watch Downton Abbey, and she plays the main character in Jamaica Inn, and oh my goodness, it's a 3-part TV series. It was so dark, and everybody in it was just terrible. And I don't remember that from the book. I don't remember feeling that way at all when I read the book, but oh gosh, and everything was so dirty and everybody's clothes were just a mess. And I was like, what? No. We only watched the first 2 parts, and then we were both like, we don't want to finish this. It was not good. Skip it. And then the next one, where this is actually, I didn't love the book as much as I enjoyed the TV series, and that is Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. I read the book a few years ago when it first came out, and I didn't really love Susan Ryland, the main character. She seemed a little abrasive to me, and something about her was off-putting when I was reading the book. And I liked it okay, but like I said, I didn't love her. I read the sequel, and she grew on me in that book. But the TV series that just was out, I think last year, I thought that was fantastic. Such a good adaptation, and there's going to be a sequel, and I am very, very excited about it. So that was one where the TV show was, I think, better than the book, personally. Are there some lesser known book to screen adaptations we should know about, or maybe some very cheesy duds? Well, if you haven't watched Wives and Daughters, the TV miniseries, which is based on Elizabeth Gaskell's novel, absolutely watch that. It is fantastic. My mom bought me the TV miniseries years and years ago, gave it to me, I think, for Christmas, and I just loved it. And I finally read the novel just last year, the year before, and rewatched the miniseries, and it's just as lovely as ever. So I highly recommend that one. And then here's one where you've probably seen the screen adaptation, but you may not have read the book, and that is the 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith. Yes, the Dodie Smith who wrote I Capture the Castle also wrote 101 Dalmatians, which I only recently found out about. And the book is so much fun. So if you enjoyed the 101 Dalmatians animated and also the live action ones that Disney has put out, definitely give the book a try. And then the last one, where someone asked for a cheesy dud, and I don't know that it's a dud, but it is on the cheesy side. And that is, if you have read The Moon Spinners by Mary Stewart, you have to watch the Haley Mills movie version of The Moon Spinners. It only vaguely follows the storyline from the book. I mean, it does. It follows the general gist of the sort of suspense mystery part of the story. And then it takes a lot of liberties with like the main character, because Haley Mills is very young in this. A little bit too young, I think, to be playing the main character as she is in the book. But there's just a lot of delightful cheesiness, and the scenery is fantastic. So if you've read The Moon Spinners, definitely watch the book. If you haven't read The Moon Spinners, you should read it. It is wonderful. And then you should watch the adaptation. Then the last question that has to do with book to screen adaptations is, what are some of your favorite book and movie or TV show adaptations? Are there some hidden gems or duds to know about? Are there some older ones and more obscure, for example, the Thornbirds miniseries, etc.? First off, I still need to watch the Thornbirds miniseries because I have not watched it. But I think I want to reread the Thornbirds and then watch the miniseries, so I may wait and watch it then. Some of my favorite book to screen adaptations have to be, I loved South Riding, the adaptation of Winifred Holtby's book, and I just read the book last year, loved it. Wives and Daughters again. The 1995 Pride and Prejudice. I am not a fan of the Keira Knightley version, sorry. I love Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet. I love the Winona Ryder Little Women. I also like the new one, the Greta Gerwig version of Little Women. That one is also excellent, but my heart is just, it is just with the Winona Ryder, Susan Sarandon version. Some of the mystery adaptations that I have really enjoyed. I really love all the TV adaptations of Anne Cleeves' novels. I've watched the entire Shetland series to date, everything that's been released. Loved it. That's one of my husband and I's favorite series. Also, I've been watching Vera. I think I'm up to season 11 or 12. So I only have a couple more seasons to go, but love Vera. And the Matthew Venn, I think they've only made the first book into a TV adaptation, but I really did enjoy that one as well. Really, really good. And then one adaptation that, again, I actually haven't read the books, but this TV adaptation was so surprisingly good, and that is the Maigret. Is that how you say that? Maigret? He's French. It's probably Maigret. The Maigret TV series starring Rowan Atkinson. Yes, Mr. Bean himself. He was so good, and it was way too short for my liking. I wish they had made way more episodes. I may have to actually rewatch it because it was really good. And the next question is, this is a bunch of questions that people asked, and they were all very, very similar with slight variations. So I'm just going to read you all the questions, and they are: if you were stranded somewhere and could only have one book, which one would it be? What would be your desert island book? You won a year-long trip to a tropical island, but you are allowed to take only 5 books. What books will you bring with you? If you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 books would you wish you had with you? What 5 books would you wish you had with you if you were stranded somewhere? 5 I can do. From those 5, I will try to narrow it down to just 3. And from those 3, I will try to narrow it down to just 1. Let's see how I do. Let's start with the 5 books I would take with me if I was trapped or stranded somewhere on a deserted island. And first, I think I would have to take my collected works of Jane Austen. I forgot to grab it from downstairs. It contains all of her novels, and I think that would keep me with some good reading for quite some time. And then, of course, I would have to choose one of my very favorite books, which is Happy All the Time by Laurie Colwin, because if I'm stranded somewhere, I need my favorite book with me. And then also because it's such a saga, and I think that it would keep me reading for and just immersed in it for such a long time, would be The Shell Seekers by Rosamund Pilcher. Plus, if you're on an island, the Shell Seeker seems like a good choice, right? And then I was thinking if I was really like stranded somewhere, then I might need something to lift my spirits. And so perhaps 14,000 Things to Be Happy About. Because this is it's such a long list of things, and I think I might just need to be reminded about all the wonderful things in the world. Though it would probably make me hungry. So if I was stranded on a deserted island and there wasn't any food, that wouldn't be the book to take. So I might have to rethink that one. And then lastly, just for pure enjoyment, I might have to take Heidi by Joanna Spyri. So those would be my 5. It's kind of hard because I might have to swap out Heidi for a mystery, like a classic Agatha Christie, either Murder on the Orient Express or And Then There Were None, because I feel kind of sad that I don't have a mystery. This is so hard, you guys. Then to narrow it down just to 3, I think it would still have to be the Jane Austen, and then Happy All the Time, and then the Shell Seekers. And then if I have to narrow it down to just one, I don't know. Part of me wants to pick Jane Austen because that would give me so much to read. Like, I just have a lot of choices within that one book. But then just one book? That's too hard. I can't, you guys. I'm sorry. I can't pick just one. I have a problem. I know. This next question, I have saved this one for the last one in this category because this is such a fantastic, complex question. And I want everyone to listen to this and then really think about this for yourself because I have never thought about it in quite this way. Librarian Nancy Pearl has a theory she calls the 4 doorways, which states that for readers, there are 4 main doorways into fiction. These doorways are story, character, setting, and language, and which one you enjoy the most often determines the type of books you'll love to read. A book with story as its biggest doorway is one that readers describe as a page turner, a book they can't put down because they desperately want to discover what happens next. A book with character as its biggest doorway is a book in which readers feel so connected with the characters that when the book is over, they feel they've lost someone dear to them. Readers of novels in which setting is most prominent say things like, I felt like I was there, or when I finished Willa Cather's Death Comes for the Archbishop, I immediately made plans to go to New Mexico. I had to see for myself where it took place. A book in which language is the major doorway leads readers to utter sentences like, I read more slowly because I want to savor the language, or I'm not even sure what the book is about, but I love the way the author wrote. Jen, which of those 4 doorways is most appealing to you? Which doorway do you enjoy the most? I have been thinking about this question since it was left in the comments. I find this so intriguing. And my initial response is that both character and story are the 2 of the doorways that I am most drawn to. I would say 100% when I think about my favorite books, it's because of the story and it's because of the characters. But if I have to then nail it down to which of those is the most important to me, I think I have to go with character, which I'm a little bit surprised about because when I first started thinking about it, I thought for sure it would be story. But then as I started to think back on books that I love that have stayed with me, it is the characters that I remember the most. Those are the things that really stuck with me. And I may not be able to remember the plot at all, but I can remember the characters. I can remember what I felt about them and how they made me feel. So 100%, I'm gonna go with character. Maybe that will change as time goes on, and maybe that would have been different when I was younger versus where I am now, but thinking about it now, definitely has to be character. So to the person who sent this question in, thank you so much. So thought-provoking, loved it. And that is the last question in the general books category. We are now moving on to genre-specific book questions. And the first question is, do you have a favorite nonfiction book that you have read yet this year? I've talked about this book already, but my favorite nonfiction, and I've only read a few so far this year, but it has to be Some Writer, The Story of E.B. White by Melissa Sweet. I read this during middle grade March and I just loved it. And even if you're not a middle grade reader, I think you can read this and just get a little glimpse at E.B. White's life and his writing. And if you loved Charlotte's Web or any of E.B. White's books, definitely give this a try. It is absolutely lovely, and it's done with words and pictures and collages, and it's just fantastic. I can't say enough good things about it. The next question, which I had to do a little research to refresh my memory on this, but someone asked me, have you ever read a South American author? Absolutely, I have. I have read Isabel Allende. I have read Pablo Neruda. I've also read Oscar Hijuelos, though he's an American-born author, but he is of Cuban descent. I have definitely read those three. I've also read a number of authors who are from either Mexico or Central America as well, and I'm sure I've read more than that, but sometimes it's hard to dig out the authors that you've read and where they're from. But if anyone has any recommendations for South American authors that I should read but haven't, please leave those in the comments, because I'm always looking for new authors to dive into. The next question is, do you have a favorite book by Barbara Pym and P.G. Wodehouse, or a suggestion of where to start with either of them? Well, I'm not sure that I've read enough of either of their books to be qualified to tell you where to start, but I'll give it a go. With Barbara Pym, first I'll start and say, I think my favorite book that I have read of hers so far, and I've read 4 of her books, I believe, 4 of her novels, is A Few Green Leaves. And this is the most recent book of hers I've read, and it is her last novel. So I don't think this is necessarily a good place to start. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened to the copy of this book, but got a little damaged. So the place I would actually say to start would probably be Excellent Women. And this is another fabulous book. So if you're looking for a place to start, give this one a try. As for Wodehouse, I've only read 2 Wodehouse books. So I have read The Inimitable Jeeves, which is a collection of short stories about Jeeves and Wooster. And then I read the first in the Blandings Castle series, which is, what is it called? Something Fresh. Something Fresh. Which I absolutely love. I mean, I loved both of these and I recommend them both. I mean, definitely with Blandings Castle, I think you should start with the first book. So if you want to read from this series, definitely start with Something Fresh. As for Jeeves, where are my Wodehouse fans? Please let me know, where should people start with Wodehouse? I mean, I started here. I'm not really sure. I don't know that you need to read Jeeves in any particular order. I'm probably not the best person to answer that question, but maybe in the comments, people can leave some suggestions for both Barbara Pym and P.G. Wodehouse. Lastly, in this category, the last question is, I know you like ballet, so my question is, what books, authors do you like best with a ballet themed background, both adult and children's? Also, do you get the chance to see any live ballet where you live? Of course, I absolutely have to start with Ballet Shoes by Noel Streatfeild, of course. I mean, the entire Shoes series is so wonderful, and you should read at least Ballet Shoes, Dancing Shoes, and Theater Shoes. Those are definitely my 3 favorites. But Ballet Shoes, if you want a book about young girls getting into ballet, this is the book to read. Definitely start here. Then another book, if you're looking for something that's nonfiction, actually written by a ballerina, then I think you can do no wrong by starting with Dancing on My Grave by Kelsey Kirkland. It is truly an amazing behind-the-scenes look at what it is like to be a prima ballerina, and it's really a no-holds-barred autobiography, memoir. I think it's more of an autobiography than a memoir. And I read it in high school and I just devoured it. It was fantastic. There are tons of nonfiction ballet memoirs and autobiographies and biographies, but that one I think is really a wonderful place to start. And then I also really love, there's a graphic novel called To Dance. and it's by Sienna Cherson Siegel. And I unfortunately think it might be out of print, but maybe you can track down a copy from your library. That was how I read it. It is so lovely. Just the illustrations are beautiful and the story is just wonderful. I highly recommend it. And then I also have to recommend a book that I never hear talked about, but is a book that I just adored when I read it, and that is Hester's Story by Adele Gérard. And this is about a ballet dancer, and it takes place, she's older now, but she puts on a ballet, I think at her home or nearby her home, like every winter. And so she has like friends from the ballet world coming to stay with her, and maybe some family as well. Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've read this. I can't remember the detail. Remember that whole thing where I was talking about story and character? I remember the characters. The story, not so much. But I absolutely love this. And I believe it kind of goes, you get glimpses back at her life when she was in her prime as a ballerina. And this is just fantastic. I absolutely adored this, and I need to reread it. Maybe this winter is the perfect, because I think it's set around Christmas time. Yeah, it's to be performed on 12th night. So winter is the perfect time to read this. I hope it's still in print so that you guys can track it down. I will definitely have links to all of the books, as always, in the description box below. And then the last ballet books I want to mention, because I was like racking my brain for what ballet books I have read over the years, because I don't have a lot of them in my possession. And I stumbled across a series of books that I read when I was like a young teenager, I believe. And it is the Satin Slippers series by Elizabeth Barnard. I read so many. I think I read all of them from what I can tell. My library had them, and I checked them all out from the library and read through this series, and I just adored it. I have no idea how it holds up, but I think I'm going to try to track down at least a copy of one of them and see what I think of it, because I feel like it's just going to bring all the nostalgia back to me. And maybe my library will have them. I don't know, but I'm going to have to check and see. If not, I may have to see if I can track down a used copy, because it just brings back all this nostalgicness. When I first saw the covers of it, they're so very 1980s. And I just love that about them. And then the last part of this question was, do I get to get the chance to see any live ballet where I live? And absolutely. I have seen many ballet performances. I've seen the Nutcracker multiple times. My mom and I used to go every Christmas. I've seen Swan Lake. I've seen numerous other ballet pieces performed, and different ballet companies perform different selections from ballets. So yes, I've seen a lot of live ballet, and I feel very blessed to have been able to do that. Though it's been a long time since I've seen a ballet, and I might need to rectify that soon. Yes, that would be lovely. We are getting down to the last few questions. We are moving on to the personal questions category. And the first personal question is, how many children do you have and what are their ages? Well, I have one son and he is 10 years old. The next personal question-ish, personal-ish, is, would you ever consider writing a novel? If so, what genre would it be? I've thought about it, and I can't tell you how many people, especially family members, tell me that I should write a novel, but I've never had an idea come to me in a way that makes me feel like I could write an entire novel about it. I could maybe try my hand at some short stories. I feel like maybe I might be okay there, but I feel like I don't have an idea that's fleshed out enough. But if I did, I would write either a coming of age story or a mystery. Though I don't know that I have the brain to like make a mystery be the kind of mystery I would want to read. I just don't know if I could do it. I've dabbled in writing stories and different things over the years, but I've never attempted to write an entire novel. And then the very last question, which is a booktube related question, and that is, how has your reading life changed since starting your channel? I would say certainly the best thing that has happened since I have started this channel is getting to interact with so many more book lovers. And talking to all of you in the comments, and that has just been so lovely. So I am thankful that you guys are here. That has brought so much joy to my life. And the only thing that's really maybe changed in my reading life is that I try to remember the books I read a little bit better, at least until I talk about them on my channel. So I can at least sort of sound like I know what I'm talking about. And it's hard to keep everything straight in my brain. But I'm really working on that. But really, other than that, I think the only thing that has changed is that BookTube has really just enhanced my reading life. It's just bringing me so much joy. I love my reading life. I think I've made it into something really, really lovely right now, and that makes me happy. And I hope all of you have reading lives that you enjoy as well. That is it. That is all she wrote, as they say. Again, I cannot thank you enough for all of these amazing questions. You guys really, really asked some fantastic questions, and it was so fun to answer them and to think through my responses to some of them, because I really did have to think about them. But thank you, thank you. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Any thoughts you have about any of these questions, any of the answers. If you could give this video a like and hit that subscribe button, that would be fantastic. And whew, these were some long videos. Hope you guys made it through to the end. I'll be back with another, hopefully shorter video very soon. Bye.